Well, here we
Yeah,
go.
we are definitely live. So,
All right.
and
I'm Meredith Jones.
I'm Willie Vidal. We are so sorry for the technical difficulties. It's never easy when you try to do a live between a few people. But yeah, here we are. We're going to discuss today a little bit about compensations and non-competes. We can also, if anybody has questions, we can get some questions about contracts overall. Either me or Meredith will be happy to answer them. I'm really passionate about this subject. So we did get some questions prior to the webinar. So we're going to go ahead and start with the first one. I am a third year vet student and already got a contract. Is it wise to sign it?
Yeah, so we've had this question come up a few times on the Debt Free Vets group, and we also occasionally will get questions through the Veterinary Financial Summit community as well. And so one of the things to keep in mind is just to take a step back and think about, why is this happening now? The reason that third years are already getting contracts from corporations and from hospitals is because hospitals are desperate to hire, and it's not a knock on any vet students who are getting these offers. It's just a matter of taking a look at, okay, years ago this wasn't happening, now it's happening. Why is it happening? And the thing is, there's just a huge, enormous demand for veterinarians out there today. And so I'm not saying that nobody should sign a contract as a vet student, but there's a lot of things that you need to keep in mind if you are considering one of these offers. And so one of my first questions whenever this comes up is, okay, well, have you worked at the hospital? And versus just visiting a couple of times. If you've only visited a couple of times, people tend to be on their best behavior at a hospital if you just visit once or twice. And the other thing to be aware of is just, not all locations in a corporation are the same. And so you may visit a location and it may be awesome, and you may be getting an offer and thinking about relocating or going to a different location. It may not be the same. It's going to have different management, may have a different setup. The other thing is, if you're signing in third year, we are going into a recession. And so a couple of things to keep in mind: those hospitals may not have the same staffing as what they have now. So even if you work there and you love it, there's no guarantee that they're going to have the same folks working there. And when you're looking at the salary, who knows what salaries are going to look like a couple of years from now, and whether your offer that you're getting now is going to be relevant, or if you're not getting a salary offer, whether that's going to be lower or higher, considering that there may be some economic changes over the next couple of years. So a lot of things to keep in mind. Other thing is, what if your interests change, and so just a lot to unpack there. And do you have anything to add to that, Willie?
No, I guess what your interest, why if your interest changes, like that's huge. I didn't know what I wanted to do in third year, certainly. So it would be tough to say, oh, I've signed a contract and then I'm committed and I still got one more year. And usually that year is the year that you rotate through different services. So you just never know. Maybe you decide to go through an internship route or whatnot. So I think, with the way the market has been in the past 2-3 years, it's tough. It's tough to say, are these salary increases are going to keep going, or is it stagnant, or is it actually going to lower? So, but yeah, I guess the most important thing is, what are your interests and what really are you passionate about? Because otherwise, I wouldn't sign a contract on my third year.
Yes, so a lot to keep in mind there. And so let's talk about just contracts in general and compensation in general. Willie, what is more important, the base salary or production, if you are going into a more production-based role?
Yeah, so this is a very controversial one, just because it's tough, what production means. to different people and to different practices. So base salary is no matter what, you're going to get paid X amount of money, which is great. You know, it helps when you budget. It helps you to receive that monthly income, and you know what's coming in. Production usually means you're going to receive X amount of dollars on top of your base salary if you produce. There's a percentage attached to production. Unfortunately, within that percentage, I have seen contracts with different tiers of production, meaning like services and exam fees. You know, you'll get 100% production, but you know, you only get the 20-some% that they usually offer. Products usually are lower percentages, so there's always tiers. So again, it's really difficult to know and understand what exactly the production means in that practice. Ideally, you have a base salary that you feel very comfortable with, and a production that meets the standard, meaning you can ask other veterinarians in that practice, you know, what is your production and how is it working for you? As far as are you actually making over that base salary? So yeah, you know, and for those doctors that are very confident of themselves, they rather have a higher production. For those doctors that maybe they want a more work-life balance and know that they're going to be taking their PTO or even work less than a full week, hey, base salary might be the ideal situation for you. Have a high base salary and don't worry about the production. If you get a check, an extra check on that month, awesome.
Yeah, definitely good advice. And so Willie, when we're looking at pay, just in general, whether it's salary based or whether it's pro sal or production based compensation, how do you know if the pay that you're being offered is fair?
How do you know if there's so many ways that you can answer that question, because you know, again, it just depends. A lot of people will go into Facebook and ask, what should I expect in, you know, in X city, in X state, let's say. Hey, I could give you an overall, a broad view of the state, but otherwise your city might be a huge difference. You know, I lived in Miami, I lived in Gainesville. So Florida, two different areas, definitely the pay will be different. The cost of living in Miami is extremely higher than what it is in Gainesville. So, but there are resources that, you know, can help you with that. One of them is just ask a colleague. Even in a practice, if you're gonna go get hired for a doctor practice, be open. Ask them how much do they get paid. There's salary surveys. The AVMA has one. They also have a salary calculator. It might not be the best resource. Again, they also put it by state. They don't really have a city-specific salary calculator, so it might be a little bit vague. But at least it gives you an example of, hey, this might be the range, the mean salary in that state. Relief Rover, if you're looking into relief, I'm excited because they posted one recently. So it's a very recent survey about what relief doctors are making in each state. And then if you are a specialist, your specialist board should be, or association, most of the times they do surveys. So you just have to reach out and get that publication. Unfortunately, I'm a diplomat of the American College of Lab Animal Medicine. To get a salary report, I have to pay for it. But you might ask a colleague and they might just provide it for you for free, hopefully, knock on wood. And then one thing that I like recommending to people is if you are moving to an area where there's maybe a school or a government agency that hires veterinarians, those are usually published online for the public. Any government entity has to publish the salaries. So, hey, if you live near vet school, just look up the salaries of the faculty. Of course, specialty faculty might get paid higher, but they usually have some GP practitioners in those hospitals. So, hey, look at their salaries and try to get a broad picture of, they're getting paid this, so maybe this is what I should be getting paid.
Yeah, a lot of good tips there. And yeah, I think another thing just to keep in mind is you're probably going to want to look at more than one source, and that's going back to the AVMA calculator. Some folks look at that and they say, oh, well, it's not accurate. Well, you're probably going to be looking at 2 or 3 different sources and just bringing all of that information together. And so I think just being open to taking a little bit of time to research it could be worth a lot of money to you. And so let's talk, yeah, could be worth a lot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the hourly rate on researching that kind of thing might be huge. So, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about signing bonuses and about moving expenses, because there's actually quite a bit of data about those things out there. And signing bonuses used to be kind of more for specialists, and they started out being kind of smaller for certain corporate jobs and that sort of thing. And now it's much more widespread. And signing bonuses are becoming really common in our field. And so a recent survey that was done by the AVMA showed that 66% of the corporate offers included a signing bonus, and the average was between $11,000 and $12,000 for a signing bonus. And then when we're looking at the independent practices, about 30% of new grads were offered a signing bonus, and that average was about $7,000. And so that's something else to keep in mind, is that it's something that we're seeing in both corporate practices and also in independent practices. So if you're a practice owner out there, something to consider doing even if you've never done it before. And then when we're looking at moving allowances or moving expenses, for corporate practices, about 40% of those were offering moving expenses, moving allowance, and it was about $5,000 that was offered for that. For independent practices, it was really only about 18% that were offering that signing bonus, or bonus for moving expenses. And the average was about $3,200. So a little bit of a difference there, but just something else to keep in mind, and also to look for as an associate when you are looking at and comparing your job offers. So Willie, what other tips do we have?
Let's see. So another tip will be, again, going more into contracts and when we talk about compensation, we usually focus on salary. Of course, you love that number. That's the number that probably everybody first goes to the contract and looks at what's going to be the salary. But people don't consider the benefits. They should be included in the package. They are part of your compensation. Those benefits cost money. So try to sit down. I'm an Excel guy. I put everything on Excel, and I put numbers into my package, meaning the days off, insurance, what is actually covered and how much I estimate that would cost. And again, that goes back to the overall number of how much am I actually getting paid. We do have a few blogs talking about that. I think the blog is called Compensation. It's not just about salary. And again, it's very important to consider that there's definitely a lot more benefits involved in this. One of the big points about contracts right now, and a hot topic that we see in LinkedIn all the time, is non-competes. There is usually a radius and a time frame attached to a non-compete, and those can be extremely detrimental to veterinarians. A non-compete really just means you can't practice within that radius during that time frame. So it really varies. It really depends where you live. Maybe where you live, 10 miles doesn't sound like much, but if you live in a city, 5 miles is quite a bit. You're going to have to drive quite a bit or commute a lot to get to that clinic. So again, just pay attention to those. And what I tell everyone, numbers are usually negotiable in a contract. So, it's just a matter of asking, hey, I don't feel comfortable signing this contract. I much rather change these numbers to this so that I'm happy with it. Any thoughts on that, Meredith?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's usually you're the one who says if there's a number in the contract, it's usually negotiable. And so definitely like that tip. And for non-competes, the best non-compete is no non-compete. And so if you can get no non-compete, awesome. That would be the goal. But if you find that it's impossible to remove the non-compete, what I would really want you to do is definitely negotiate the scope of practice. And so if you're an emergency vet, you should not be signing a contract that says that you can't work GP anywhere in your city. It doesn't make sense. Especially with emergency vets not really being competitive vets anyway. And so I think that would be something that you would, that definitely you would want to have that in your contract, that you could do other types of practice, especially if you're an emergency vet. But even if you're not, if you're a GP and you decide, hey, I want to do house call euthanasia, or I want to go and do emergency, you should be able to do that anywhere you want and not be limited by a non-compete. And then the other thing is just getting that radius, as Willie was saying, just getting that mile radius as small as you possibly can and getting that time frame as low as it possibly can be. So if they're offering you a 3-year non-compete, you probably want to try to get that down to 1 year, 1.5 years. If they're offering you a 10-mile non-compete, you probably want to try to get that down to 5 or lower. So that sort of thing. And so a lot of good tips there that Willie had for looking at contracts. And so, and the other thing is the blog you were talking about. That's on the Vet Financial Summit website, so vetfinancialsummit.com. And so, Willie, I really wish there was a way that our colleagues could learn even more about contracts and compensation.
Well, again, like you mentioned, they can go to our website at financialsummit.com and look up past blogs. We do have a summit coming up. It's October 22nd and 23rd. We have many panels, and one of them is about contract negotiations, and the other one is about compensation. So certainly a lot of information there. We have great guests for those panels. I'm pretty excited to listen to them discuss these different aspects, because it's certainly evolving. It's crazy. One point that you were talking about in the radius and time frame of those non-competes, I thought, we were talking about sign-on bonuses, and I totally forgot to mention they usually have a time frame attached to them. So be wary. Are you really going to sign something that keeps you in a clinic for 2-3 years? Sign-on bonuses should be prorated, meaning it is based on the time that you're already in the clinic. So let's say I seen contracts with $50,000-$100,000 sign-on bonus. They usually have a long time frame, 2-3 years. So if you don't stay there for 3 years, you got to pay that money back, because they usually pay it up front. So you just got to make sure it's prorated, so that if you ever leave, then you just owe whatever you didn't complete out of that contract. And again, sign-on bonus might sound awesome and easy, but it does come with its caveats. So, make sure it might help you start off in a great financial leg, but otherwise, make sure that you feel comfortable with what you're signing. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that has come up with those sign-on bonuses is say you are in a practice for a year, you decide you want to leave and you have to pay back part of that signing bonus. Well, if you got for example, a $10,000 signing bonus, after taxes, that's probably $7,000. And then if you leave and you have to pay that back,
guess what you have to pay back? Not $7,000. You have to pay $10,000 back. So there's a difference there with taxes being taken out, what you're actually taking home, and then what you actually have to pay back a lot of times. So that's another reason to ask for it to be prorated. And they're probably not going to prorate it if you don't ask for it. So
that's a good point. If you don't ask for it, they're not going to give it to you. So might as well ask for it. The worst they can say is no. And not only for sign-on bonuses, I'm talking about the full contract. Make sure you read it. If you don't feel comfortable with some point in the contract, just ask for it to be changed. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and that's really a general point too, right? If you don't ask for it, they're not just going to give it to you.
There's no reason to.
Exactly. So asking for what you want. And so let's see. So yeah, we are going to have a lot more content on contracts, negotiation, also on benefits and compensation at the Veterinary Financial Summit. So that is an event we are hosting virtually on October 22nd and 23rd. And so you can go to vetfinancialsummit.com/summit to check that out. Feel free to join our email list as well, and we'll be sending out more updates. But we've got some fantastic speakers at the summit in general, and then also on these particular topics. We'll have Lance Rosa talking about contracts. We've got Jonathan Light, who is an expert on negotiation. We also have Isaiah Douglas, who is going to be chiming in on contracts and compensation as well. So we're super excited for those events. And thanks so much for joining us tonight, and take care.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.